Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast. P is for Plog. This is my weekly-ish podcast where I talk about my life as a professional plogger. Yes, I'm trying to make a living out of picking up trash, running around in a banana suit. It's a bit of a struggle, but I'm trying to make it work. And this is just my weekly summary of how it's going. I'm going to try and keep it focused this week. So we've got a very short podcast, I hope. I'm saying that at the beginning of the podcast. We'll actually see what it turns out like. This is season 2, episode 19. P is for Paul's perception. Let's get going.
Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it.
I just made that up. It was going to be P is for perception, but I kind of wanted, I think perception is something that I'm going to be using as a word for these podcasts a lot more because one of the reasons is I do not like to use data. So there are some really great people that are using data to track their litter picking, but I just do not find that the methodologies are actually valid, and I think they're sort of overstepping their bounds in terms of how it's used. The reason being, and I use this as an exception every time, is if I go down a street at 7 o'clock in the morning, this one street, I know I might find, let's say, 100 pieces of trash. If I were to go down there at 7:02, I might not find anything because, oh, hang on, the council have just done a cleanup there. Or if I just do a run today, if I go in that direction, I might find loads of trash. If I go the other direction, I might not find anything. There's just too many variables for me to put a scientific methodology on it. So I just don't track data. I mean, there are some exceptions. The amount of track I pick up, and obviously Canuary I do, but even Canuary, I mean, I really struggle when I compare years on Canuary because sometimes I put more effort into finding it. I might try and go, oh, let's do a different route, and I'll take a different route. So, and I'll take a different track and find loads. So it's even I struggle with using those stats. I think the stats that people are providing are luckily sort of in the right ballpark, but I just don't find, for me, that stats work very well. So that's why I'm talking about perception. So all the following are just anecdotal observations that I have feelings. It's more of a feeling. So just bear that in mind. I'm not saying this is the truth. I'm not saying this is happening. It's just my observations and my gut feeling for why it's happening. If you've been following my Instagram, you'll know what I'm going to be talking about. I want to talk about the fact that it seems to be that it's just freaked me out how many people I've seen dropping trash right in front of my eyes recently. And I just cannot get over that fact. I literally spent the first more than a decade of my life as a plogger never seeing people drop trash. There was like one or two, just a handful. There are a couple that sort of stick in my mind. And one was a kid that was just on the bike and he dropped a sweet wrapper, and I just picked it up, cycled after him, and then said, "I think you dropped this." Or there were some kids doing it at a supermarket, and the same thing, I picked it up and said, "I'll put it in the bin for you," because they were right next to the bin. So there's been a couple of times where I've definitely seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And you can't pick up the amount of trash I do without knowing that people are dropping trash. It's just, I think what they do is they've, up until now, or the feeling, perception, my Paul's perception is, and it was going to, so Paul's perception is that people were knew that it was wrong, and so they were doing it when they weren't being seen, or they were doing it at night when they were drunk or something like that. There was some reason why when I was running I was not seeing them doing it, sort of them doing it, or just walking down the street, or any time during the day I just never saw people doing it. But now in the last year, and it actually kicked off, I think it kicked off last year. Last year, I actually managed to get on camera my first ever person dropping trash, and it was actually an old woman. It was an elderly woman that just sort of pulled something out of her coat pocket, a piece of paper dropped on the ground. She looked at it and then just carried on. Yeah, it's paper, doesn't matter. And so I love the fact that it was an older woman. I'm coming back to that in a second because of another conversation I had. But So that was last year. I suddenly saw, oh, I've got it on camera. Finally, I've got one on camera. And then what's been happening is in the last couple of months, just the last short period of time, I've seen more people doing it and blatantly. There was the when if you saw my Instagram, there was I was cycling and then this kid on a or this sort of young teenager or this teenager on a bike just finished their food, just dropped the packaging on the ground. Bang. I chased after them and sort of tracked them down. And then I think it was last week, I literally picking up trash in this flower bed, and this group of three guys, probably 19, 20 years old, just walked past me, and one just literally pulls their wrapper off, or I think it was an ice cream or something, just this piece of wrapping, and just threw it on the ground in front of me. And that act just really shocked me. I had the feel it was just so blatantly in front of a guy picking up trash that it felt like I'm dropping trash because you're picking it up. That's how it felt. It was just so brutal. I was just shocked by it. I just sort of said, "Hey, what are you doing? You just dropped trash," and they just carried on walking with his two mates, just completely ignoring me. Now you're picking. It had the feeling, and again, this is perception. It had or internally to me, it felt like you're below me. And this is why it is perception. It's not saying it is true or anything. It's not on a conversation I've had. And oh, look, Eric from Plogger is actually phoning me. I'm just going to decline that. Eric, I just declined your call then. It just came through Dish on the podcast. So Eric is the person that founded Plogging. So how cool is that? Live on screen. uh, yeah, so this is my perception. I don't know if that's a thing. I had the feeling that they were like, you're below me. Yeah, this could be my perception of my own feeling rather than theirs, but it just came across, and I think it probably would come across to other people looking at it as well as, yeah, that guy thinks that he's above me. And yeah, he knows that he sees I'm doing it and he's dropping it on the ground for me to pick up, knowing that, oh, let him do it. That's his job. Uh, and it just completely shocked me. I just sort of shouted at him. People around me were just like, "What the hell's going on? This is just ridiculous." I don't know if they were like, "What the hell's going on with this guy? This weird guy with a grabber just shouting at this guy or whatever." But I was just like crazy. I just ran after him, and because I didn't run after him, rather he was actually in that direction. Oh, that's it. I'm doing this live now. So Eric's just said, "Time for a fast talk." In 2 minutes in middle of a podcast. I kind of like that. That's kind of cool. Just super cool. This guy in Sweden who invented the word plogging, who, we're sort of good friends and everything. It's just chatting to me like that. Wants to have a quick chat. Uh, I forgot what we were talking about. Oh yeah, I wasn't. This is going to turn out to be a long episode, isn't it? So I wasn't deliberately running after him. He was just in that direction. I thought, well, look, I'm running that direction. I'm not going to change my path. That was my intent to go in that direction. It just runs past him, just coincidentally. So I just ran past him and then had a conversation with him. And it turned out to be, yeah, I tried to keep it positive and say, look, I'm trying to give you a future. I pick up 30,000 liters of. I've just picked up already 30,000 liters of trash already this year because I want to give you a future. Just don't drop trash. And he was like, we boxed it out and things like that. And then if you saw my Instagram post, he said at the end, he said, yeah, sorry, if I knew that you were there, I wouldn't have done it. I was like, no, you were doing so well. You were doing so well until you said that. No, it shouldn't matter if I was there or not. Just don't drop trash. And he went, oh yeah. But it was still a bit sort of nonchalant. I'm pretty sure it had no impact, but hopefully it's like I'm trying to do. It's just another drop in a bucket until that bucket becomes full and it makes an impact and it changes his life. So that's sort of my intention behind it. But that happened in front of me, that kid on the bike, and I'm just seeing it more. I have this perception that it's now become tolerated. I'm not in the post I said, is it acceptable to drop trash now? But it is now acceptable that there is trash on the ground. People, when I pick up trash, I see people just walking along and they will just step on trash. They are literally walking on trash down a high street. They just see it, all right, that's flat paper, I'll just walk over it. If it's something that's a little bit big, they walk around it. It has become an automatic, subconscious action of walking down a street knowing that there is trash on there. It's become so acceptable. And I think as a result, it's become tolerated that people drop trash. That's the feeling. Or people are living in their own sort of world. They were on the Instagram. I had some really good comments about it. It's like people all to do with people are just there for themselves, and that's happened with Instagram. And it's true of me. You know, it's frustrating that I'm trying to make this blogging career work, and one of the problems I've got is I just don't have time because I'm spending every minute of my day doing things. I don't have time to follow everyone's feeds. And I think that's true. I think the reason why talk about Instagram engagement, everyone moans about it if you're trying to be an influencer. The truth is just to ask yourself, how many posts do you like? How many posts do you scroll through? You're focused on your post rather than other people's posts. And that's true of me. And frustratingly so, I get a bit stressed and upset about it. And same with Strava. I don't see people's Strava things. So people are just so focused in their own bubble, doing their own thing that they just feel that yeah, it's just too individual. The community's gone. And but yeah, this is sounding like sort of a negative, but there are also positives. You see that the plogging industry, the plogging community is getting stronger. It seems to be there's some big players coming into the market now. There are accounts that are getting loads of traction. You know, frustratingly for me, because I've been doing it for like 14 years, and my accounts like so low. They just do a couple of posts and say, I'm going to pick up one piece of trash for every follower I get, and then suddenly they get 2 million followers, and then they go, oh, sorry, I can't pick up 2 million pieces of trash this month or today. I will pick up 100 pieces instead. They sort of have these accounts popping up, but they are popping up, and they are fantastic. And it doesn't matter if I get the engagement or they get it. It's plogging is getting the engagement. The trash is getting the engagement. So there's a load of positive things that are happening as a direct result of that. So as much as I see this negative element of people, it seems to become tolerated for people to drosh trash, or people are more brutal with just doing it and being okay. I'll do whatever I like, and I'll just drop it on the ground. We've also got the other community that are really they're being more vocal and trying to make an impact, and I'm really sort of seeing that. So maybe it's just becoming we're just separating more. That's because instead of being united in trying to find a common goal, we go, right, I'm right, you're wrong, and we're going to stick on our camp. We're going to stick on our camp. You see that with politics, especially at the moment. It's never been more divided, it feels like. That's what I wanted to talk about, just this observation. But I just want to leave it now with another comment that people make is the kids are dropping, the youth, it's the youth's fault. And I was just walking to an event, and this guy cycled past me and he went, you're the banana guy, aren't you? He was an old guy. So I think he was probably in his 60s. He's an old guy. He's a postal worker. And he says, yeah, I see you all the time. Sort of, I'm doing these deliveries, and I see you all the time with this banana suit and everything. I think it's great what you do. We had that sort of conversation, and then he said, and I think so he said, yeah, we also sort of pick up cans and things like that. Yeah, we pick up a bit of trash. There's an account, Judith. I'll link to her below. She's got a great account where she's a DHL, I think, courier, and so she picks up trash, which is fantastic. So and that postman was actually doing the same thing. I thought it was really cool. So yeah, he was like said talking about that, and then he said something that just literally took my breath away, because it's my observation as well, my perception, and it was his perception as well. And he said, yeah, and it's not, and this was just him talking to me. I was just walking along and he was telling me, and he said, yeah, and the crazy thing is, it doesn't matter how old you are, people are doing it. He literally said, this is cross across age boundaries. People are dropping trash regardless of their age, and I said, yeah, it's so true. Yes, maybe there are more kids doing it, youth doing it than adults, but don't think the adults aren't doing it. You know, there was a comment about there's been some recent comments about, okay, there's more trash in the cities than there is outside the cities, and I really observed that. I really did observe that when I did my 100 kilometer, no, so my Tile of Staden plog, the 1500 kilometer plog around the Netherlands. I really noticed that, hang on, I didn't actually get a lot of trash, because the reason being is a lot of time I was out of the cities, so I wasn't getting that huge amount of trash. But why is that? The question is, all right, so that's pretty obvious that the big cities have more trash than outside of the country. Is that because the country has a community that doesn't do it? Or is it because they have just less numbers of people? I will go on a road and I won't find much trash. Is that because they don't drop trash, or is it because there's less people to drop trash? I still find trash. That's the important thing, is irrespective of where I am, there is trash. And it's the same thing. I will run in an affluent area and I don't find as much trash. But is that because the houses are bigger, there are less people there are less people going along? I still find trash. There are still people dropping trash. So do not think that it's limited to one demographic of people, whether that's an age group, a social standing, a gender, a racial differentiation. Doesn't matter what. People drop trash from every element of life. And that really that was fantastic. This older guy was actually saying, yeah, it's actually across generations. And for the people that do say the youth are doing it, yeah, who's raised the youth? It's the older generation. Who's responsible for their behaviors? Yeah, I'm not saying it's entirely the parents' fault. I'm not saying entirely it's the older generation's fault, but they have raised their kids. You can't avoid that. It's whether that even if that is not the major influence in their life, the reason why it's happening, it is an element that is happening. So damn it, the podcast went on longer than I planned. I think that's what I want to talk about, really. It's just sort of that perception, and for me, that's actually more important than any data. So one of the reasons why you don't get data from me is because I don't feel that the methodology that I do is would be valid, or any results I got. It just wouldn't be. I wouldn't feel. Um, I don't think it would be correct for me to present that data saying this is the observation. It is that observation that that's trash is what I have picked up. It's not necessarily what is the true story. Um, so I will always be based on perception and observations, because bottom line, if I pick up a piece of trash, doesn't matter whether that's a plastic spoon or a bamboo spoon, there's a behavior that needs to change. Until I do runs where I don't find trash, or hardly any pieces of trash, there's always a need to change. And that's my focus, is changing the behaviors of people. Because it doesn't matter if governments change, it doesn't matter if all the corporations and brands change, if they do a perfect job, if we are still the ones that are dropping trash, is there a future for us? We need to change the behaviors. And we need to change the behaviors in the vast majority. We will never be able to change everyone's behavior, but we need to be able to make it that it's the norm and it's not tolerated to drop a piece of trash in public. My name is Paul. This is my way of life, and this is my perception on life. Maybe it strikes a chord with you. Thanks for listening. I'll speak to you next week. Bye.